Speaking Myanmar, lessons for English-speaking learners, noun-forming particles. In this lesson, you'll learn the basics of changing Myanmar verbs and adjectives into nouns. You'll learn 4 of the main particles used to create nouns from verbs or adjectives, and you'll learn how to pronounce them and where they're placed in a word. First, let's talk for just a minute about the difference between concrete and abstract nouns. Concrete nouns are people and things that physically exist. Abstract nouns refer to ideas or qualities or conditions, things that can't be literally seen or touched. They don't exist physically. These are generally the kind of nouns formed by using verbs or adjectives. Let's look at some English examples. Here is a list of verbs that can be changed into abstract nouns. Notice that each of these uses a different suffix to make the change. Now that last one is the exception. It becomes a concrete noun in that a bakery is a place. It actually exists. Next, these are adjectives that have different suffixes added to form abstract nouns. And with these, you have a whole new set of suffixes used to form the noun. In the Myanmar language, a similar method is used to form nouns. And you'll learn the 4 primary particles in this lesson used to accomplish that. This is the first particle I'm going to talk about. You may recognize it as a letter of the alphabet. And when you recite the alphabet, it's pronounced ah. But when used as a particle, the pronunciation changes to Now this particle is the only one that we're going to consider in this lesson that comes before the noun or adjective. We're going to look at 3 different examples. So this example, the adjective myare, means to be many. But you often use that as a noun when speaking about many or most people. So notice that's pronounced amya. Now notice how I changed the word. I removed the final particle from the end of the root word and added the prefix a. A prefix is added before something. So look at this next example. The word for to work or to do something is lote. You can use this word for work to create a noun that means job, the job you're employed at. Now, how would you do that? Well, you'd follow the process. You'd remove the final particle and add the a particle before the root. Now you have the word for a job, which is alo. But now what if you have a verb with 2 syllables, a word like to argue, nyenkonde? Well, this can be a little more tricky. So to create the noun for argument using this particle, you have to add it before each syllable, so it becomes anyakon. And there are a number of words like that. Asat turns the verb for to be connected into the word for connection. Apuasi turns the verb for to organize into the word meaning organization. Now let's look at the next particle. This is the first of 3 suffixes that can change a verb or adjective into a noun. It's pronounced mu. So in the first example, I'll use the word for to be happy. Pyoshwinde, an adjective. So in this case, the word for happiness becomes pyoshwimhu. How did I do that? Well, I removed the final particle and added the mu particle after the root word. And even though the root word has 2 syllables, I don't need to add it between those 2 syllables. Now the next word I'll use means to guide someone, and it's pronounced lan hyunde. How would you change this into the word meaning guidance? Well, again, you're going to remove the final particle and replace it with mu, making it lan hyun hu. Lastly, the adjective for free, lulate, becomes lulamhu. Notice that the Myanmar particle for all three of these words is the same, but the English uses three different suffixes. The next particle I'm going to talk about is pronounced chin or jin, depending on the tone of the preceding syllable. Now, I'm going to use the same word, to be happy, in this first example, and that's because either suffix creates the same word for happiness. Now, this particular suffix, chin, is more commonly used with written text, whereas the previous particle, mu, is more often used in spoken language. However, that's not always the case. It's not a hard, fast rule. So the word is pronounced pyoshwin jin. We use the same process for all suffixes. Replace the final particle with the noun-forming particle. Now, many words, even in the spoken language, don't use the mu particle. For instance, the verb for to sleep, ate. What will change it into a noun? Well, replace that last particle, and it becomes achin. The word for to love is chitte. That makes the noun for love chitchin. Notice in these last two examples that since the previous syllable was a stop tone, it ended abruptly, the pronunciation became chin and not jin. The last noun-forming particle I'm going to talk about is this one. It's pronounced da or da. Now, in this first example, this may very well be a part of one of the first phrases you learn. When you want to say, it's nice to meet you, you say, Dueara wantabare. Well, that phrase uses this suffix. Now, the verb here is a combination of two verbs, to meet and to be able to. So it means to be able to meet. So in Myanmar, the phrase you'll use when meeting someone turns this verb into a noun. It becomes dueada and basically means our being able to meet as a thing, as a noun. Verbs and adjectives that use this suffix usually will not use either of the other two suffixes I've discussed. However, the method is the same. Replace the final particle with this suffix to form a noun. Let's look at a couple of other examples. To speak is pyore, but what someone said is pyora. Now, the word for a speech or a discourse given is not the same, nor is the word that means the ability to speak, speech. This is used to refer to something someone said. Lastly, to arrive is yaute, which makes arrival yauta. Now you may be thinking, there must be a way to know which particle to use. Surely there must be some system. Well, let me ask you this. Well, let's go back and look at our list of English nouns that are formed from verbs and adjectives. Can you explain why you say each of those words that way? Why do you say resistance and not resistment, or assignment and not assignure? Well, it's because you just learned over time and repetition the correct way to say each. And you'll find that's true for Myanmar as well. But there's a lot less particles in Myanmar to have to choose from. And if that's not confusing enough, In the English language, think about these questions. Why do we call the place we park our car a driveway and the place we drive our car a parkway? Why is it that we send a shipment by car, but a cargo by ship? I could go on, but I don't want to discourage you anymore. So let's do a brief review. In the way of review, verbs and adjectives can be changed into nouns with the use of noun-forming particles. The four main particles were covered in this lesson, and they are a, mu, chin, or jin, and ta, or da. Now that first one, is the only particle that comes before the root word, and sometimes between the two parts of the root verb. The other three particles follow the root word, but in all cases, the original final particle is always removed. And that finishes this lesson.